We just finished half of our journey through this infamous Cape Coast Castle dungeon. We're just out of the male dungeon, and we have yet to go to the female dungeon. But I have to ask you, Rabbi, this is your first time here in this experience at the Cape Coast Castle dungeon. And having gone through one of the dungeons, it's a hard question to say, how do you feel? Because I don't want to put it in those terms, because it's obvious that it's a very traumatizing experience, and it's not something that can be digested immediately after to put in words, but I'm still going to put the pressure on you for the sake of the documentation to share some words of having come out of that.
Well, I would say I wasn't prepared for what I would feel when I went into those dungeons. And when I say not prepared, I mean emotionally prepared. I was intellectually prepared because I knew the history of what happened as facts. And of course I had seen pictures and I've heard stories. But when we went into the rear room,
Yes.
at first I tried to hold back the tears. And then as we stayed in there, you could almost feel the walls closing in on you. You could hear the sound of the ocean from the outside, but it almost sounded like a cry, a voice.
Yes. Yes.
And it was one of the most moving experiences I've had. And for those of you who've been watching my videos, I've been to many historic places of famous people and artists and musicians and politicians. But even without attaching a specific name to that, and maybe that gave it even more gravity, because instead of a name, you had a number, a mass, how many thousands, how many millions. And I'm so glad that the place was preserved so that this history, what it meant not only in the past, but what it still means today. Because a people without memory are like a person with amnesia. They don't know who they are. And it's important that we know this history to honor those who went through this experience. You know, it's a testament in an odd way to the strength of those people. As I said, I could barely take a few minutes, which
Yes.
felt like much longer, but
Yes.
before you start to feel claustrophobic and to think about people who spent weeks and months first in that dungeon and then boarded onto ships where they spent additional weeks and months, and then generations of people went through that experience. And so it tells us they were strong people.
Strong people. And it gives us a sense, a greater sense of who we are. And we're their descendants and ascendants. And we know that the caliber and the substance that we're made of is really gold and diamond. Because only through pressure that a diamond can become a diamond or gold can become gold. And certainly we are those who've been refined in the refiner's fire and pressured in the pressure that what takes to make a stone into a diamond. And nothing makes us appreciate our ancestors more than understanding what they had to go through and the resilience they had to have in choosing to live, that we might be.
Yeah.
And that knowing that we are them and they are us.
There's some issues I'd like you to quickly talk to our people and some of my students back at Northampton Community College who perhaps will be studying this, certainly in our course. And one of the documents that I have them read is a first-hand account of an African, just one person. His name was Alano Equiano, also known as Mustafa Sabo. And he describes, from his point of view, the process of being captured, probably somewhere in Guinea, And he talks about being sold many times over many weeks, from this trader to the next trader to the next trader, bringing them closer and closer to the coast. And then seeing, as you said in our tour, the ocean for the first time. So we know that these were African people, but they often did not enslave their own people.
Yes.
They enslaved what they considered other people.
Yes.
Meaning people from the interior.
Yes.
So for particularly African American students, African American people who wonder and ask sometimes the wrong question, how can Africans enslave their own people? Right? Explain why they didn't think of all black people as being their people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you've hit upon a very important point because many of our people use their contemporary consciousness and lingo and language and terminologies and try to apply it to centuries ago. And today we understand that we identify ourselves as African people, and they don't realize the process that it took us to go through to be called a name that collectively includes us all into a collective consciousness, outside of what we used to be referred to by virtue of our different kingdoms, our ethnic groupings, so that a person that may have come from a coastal land did not necessarily see someone from the hitherlands or in the interior as their literal brother, because there was no labeling that collectively put us together that showed that we were family. So if I was a Mandinka, you know, certainly someone who was a Fulani wasn't necessarily my brother. And we know that the kind of diversity that we had in terms of our linguistics, and that there are over 1,000 dialects on this continent, 2,000 dialects on this continent. If we take the Gold Coast alone, we can have maybe about 30 different dialects. So certainly as we cross from dialect to dialect, from one language to another, that doesn't necessarily have to be my brother. So we have to appreciate now we have a Pan-African consciousness, even at various stages. That Pan-African consciousness brings us into the reference to there's an African family. And that brings us to thinking that how could one African brother sell another African brother or sister into slavery?
Right.
But we didn't have that consciousness that the African was one large family.
Right.
We were diversified.
Point that they didn't have race consciousness the way we, particularly in America, tend to think in terms of skin color. And so therefore all the people with the same color skin are the same people.
Absolutely.
But this had good points and bad points about it.
Yes.
One is, I think it recognized that in order to be a people, you have to have something of substance in common.
Yes.
Beyond even a particular kind of complexion.
Yes.
And so what they had in those individual, what people call tribal ethnic groups, they had language, they had religion, they had culture and tradition, they had leadership, they had economics, they had history.
Yes.
And it takes all of those things to be a people. And so they would say, I have all of that, I'm a people.
Yes.
These other group of people, they have that, they're also a people,
Yes.
but they're different people.
Yes.
Right? So I think on the one hand, we're learning today that you must have those things to consider yourself a people. And that those are important. But almost beyond your nation, you also have to maintain your humanity.
Absolutely.
So to respect and love other people and other nations, if they are indeed a people.
Yes.
You know. But then as just human beings, even if they are different people, they are human beings.
Yes.
And I think what this shows is the inhumanity of man towards man, and that people are capable of doing horrible things, particularly for the love of money.
Yes, absolutely.
It's all about money.
All about money.
From
and
the
economics.
African side, from the European side, they were all in it for the money.
That's why the term trade is in there. It was about commerce. And the whole economic language and even legal language is based upon the laws of commerce. Although it's a civil society, even the language of law today is basically predicated upon the cornerstone of the laws of commerce. And our global economic foundations today were built on this trade in human cargo in Africa. And we haven't gone that far from that. So the imbalance of wealth and capital today is based upon what took place with the what we call the North Atlantic slave trade, and is extended even unto this day.
Well, these are some important points, and we're going to have opportunity to talk to you during our stay here in Ghana. But what particularly would you want people who haven't visited Ghana yet to know and to think about in preparation for coming here?
Well, I would say that one needs to come here with a very open mind, a mind to be informed again, educated again, and be enlightened again about understanding of people who have been obscured through history. When one comes through here, you will realize this is where the identity of a people that existed in grandeur and glory and many different diverse ways had that erased and a new people were reconstructed. This is the beginning of the construction of the Negro myth, the Negro personality, and Negro history that ultimately climbed up to be what we understand today in racial terms, the history of the black man versus the white man. It's all constructed here. Rabbi, you said it earlier, our understanding of race was not the understanding the way we understand it today prior to the slave trade. And one comes back here to new beginnings of understanding the source of what we see today as the racial dilemma. And one opens up their mind and their spirit to understand that the atrocities here, if you open up your mind, you will feel the pain in the womb that is still laying wide open and can begin to be a process, it began to be a part of a process that can, if we are blessed enough, be a part of the healing. If you understand that there's an injury that took place here and that that injury has never been healed, we can be a part of a healing process or suggest what should be the beginning of a healing process. I think it's something that everybody should experience. Everybody should make it a part of their life commitment to come here, to be a part of this experience. And no matter who you are, you can begin to understand the dangers of humanity forgetting that the human race is a race. And as long as we mistreat any human being on the face of this earth, we have mistreated our own selves, and we can never find the balance that is needed in humanity again to go forward, to seek paths of peace and reconciliation in this world.
Thank you for those remarks. Again, we're going to have a lot more with Kohen during our stay here, but we'll let that sink in as we tour more of this castle, the other castle, and some of the other surroundings.
I would like
Take care. Be well.